Hi kids, welcome back to another pizza party. I'm Mrs. Pizza and this is going to be a reading vlog. Cheese is back there. I don't know if you can see her, but if you can, she's very tired. She's been a very crazy puppy this morning, so now it's time for naps. And Winnie might be outside. And we are here today to do another episode of, hey, ma'am, girl, lady, sir, do you even read? Have you ever read? What are you doing? And this is where I read books that everyone else has read. Everyone else's absolute favorite books that for some reason I just never picked up because apparently I don't like to have fun. Who knew? So we are going to start this vlog. I am going to be picking up 2 books and I have another one on the way that is the main contender in this, the one that I believe literally everyone and their grandmother has read, and I might be the last person on the planet to read. Hopefully that gets here soon. But first, let's talk about the books we are going to read. Let me go get them. The first book that I'm going to be picking up is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I know. That's what this whole entire vlog is about. How can I have not read this book? How? Who? What? Where? So I am going to be picking up this one. Full disclosure, I have on multiple occasions tried to read this book, but I've always tried to read it via audiobook. I've always gotten it via audiobook from the library and have not been able to make it very far with the audiobook. I think it is the narrator. I am not 100% sure, and I found it cheap, secondhand, decided to pick it up, and I'm going to try the physical route with this. As far as I've gotten, I think I've only ever gotten like a very short way in, but this is the story of 3 sisters. Our main sister is Jude, and she and her 2 other sisters are taken to the land of fairy when they are very, very young, and they then grow up as humans in fairy. She is not well liked by the people of fairy. They do not have the warmest and the fuzziest feelings for humans, and so growing up in fairy has been hard. She has this nemesis, is what we're going to call him, and he's the absolutely gorgeous and absolutely horrible prince of the fairies. He sounds like he's very attractive. This is the first book in a series. I believe there are 3 main books, and then there's like a spin-off series that's currently being published. I just want to be like everybody else and really like this book, so we're gonna try it. The other book that we are going to pick up, I got through the library, and we're going to do that one as audiobook, and that is Misery by Stephen King, because this is the book that everyone has been telling me that I need to pick up next in my Stephen King journey. This is the story of an author who is in a car accident, and he is saved by his #1 fan. I know that I feel like I've never seen the movie, but yet I know a little bit about it because the movie exists. It's really hard to avoid spoilers for Stephen King's stuff because I live in America and people talk about these things. So I know that our #1 fan is a little bit on the cuckoo bananas side, and so him being saved from the snow from this car accident by her, even though she might have saved his life, he might be in a lot more danger with her than he would have been on the side of the road. I don't know. I think this is a little bit more thriller than the other Stephen King books I've read. I think of everything else I've read for him has had like a little bit of a supernatural edge, and I don't believe there's any sort of supernatural elements in this story as far as I'm aware of, but I'm looking to get into it. I've got a bunch of things to do around the house this week, so maybe I will make a good dent in Misery by Stephen King, but I'll check back in when I've made some headway on some books. How about that? Hello. All right, so I am about, I think it's like 49% of the way into Misery. I didn't mean to focus on my audiobook this week, but because I have so much going on, the audiobook is what we've been focusing on. So Here's what I will say about this one. I have found with every single Stephen King book that I have picked up so far, which I am on number 4 at this point, that his books are just compulsively readable. They're just something that you pick up and you just don't want to put down. I also find, and I found this in all of his books that I've read so far, that he is really good at creating tension and anxiety, not necessarily in traditional ways, is how I'll put it. In this story, we have Paul, our author, who is at the mercy of Annie Wilkes, who has rescued him from a car accident in the snow. They are in her secluded cottage. There is no one else around. And Paul realizes very quickly that he is in danger. You are, from the very beginning of your introduction to Annie Wilkes, absolutely disgusted with her. Or I should say Paul is disgusted with her. And so you as the reader are supposed to pick up on this pretty quickly. How there is a moment where she's giving him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and just like him describing the taste of her breath, the way that he describes this mouth-to-mouth resuscitation will it literally will make you uncomfortable and kind of grossed out. How he always describes Annie is he is just repulsed by her, and he is very good at describing her in a way that is supposed to repulse you. Paul is disgusted by Annie. In this, though, you don't have a view of Annie outside of Paul's, and so you just have to trust that she is this disgusting and slightly menacing creature. You only have Paul's point of view to go from, so you have to trust him that she's just really gross. One of the things that I've really liked in this so far is that Paul is in a lot of pain from the car accident, and they use this image of a pylon in the water, kind of how the tide comes in and covers this piece of, I'm assuming it's metal or wood, with water, so you can't see it, but you know that it's still there. And then slowly, as the tide recedes, you are able to view this structure again, this tide kind of coming in and going out. And that is how we are introduced to the visual representation of Paul's pain. So this ebbing and flowing of him being on a pain medication, but knowing that underneath that pain medication, his pain still exists. It's just been covered by the water, by the tide. And slowly as the tide comes out, the pain becomes something he can experience again. This was really incredibly visual, which I really enjoyed, that we are thinking of his pain as this tide, how he describes Annie is this idol that is kind of the moon, which is in charge of the tides. There's this very beautiful imagery if you actually think about it, but then also describing Annie and her breath and how she smells and how she moves the grossest way possible. I also will say at the 50% mark, Mr. Stephen King loves him a scrapbook. There is a scrapbook in The Shining and there's a scrapbook in this one, and that is how he gives the audience all of the background information into what's going on in this place with this person, the stuff that you don't know how you're going to get these answers. It's a scrapbook. This man loves a scrapbook. I don't feel like people keep scrapbooks like they used to. Maybe criminals do in haunted hotels. Maybe there's just scrapbooks in all these awful places. I will say I have just passed the rat scene. I was listening to this on audiobook, walking my dog when it's a very short scene, but if you've read this book, you probably remember the rat scene. And oh my gosh, I'm pretty sure I was grimacing the entire time I was walking my dog. And I'm sure everyone walking past me was like, why is this girl pulling faces at us as she walks? It wasn't you. It was Annie Wilkes with a rat. I know that this is going to keep building anxiety. We know Paul is unsafe in this place. We know Annie is an unsafe person to be with. She's unstable. She's unpredictable. And that's also the thing where there is, even though Paul is trying to figure out kind of how Annie works, she's not figure outable. She is very unpredictable. She is obsessed with Paul's writing. And so we're also getting these moments where we jump into the book that Paul is currently writing, which honestly, I'm having a good time listening to the book. I think it was a historical / romancy series that he was writing, and he is having to rewrite the last book because Annie didn't like how it ended. I am really enjoying this. It's very, very listenable. It's very, very readable. It's easy to kind of get sucked into Stephen King books, and I'm really enjoying this one so far. I hope I keep enjoying it. I have only gotten about, I think it's 50 or 60 pages into this bad boy, The Cruel Prince. I think I'm about at the same spot that I was when I stopped listening to it on audiobook at this point. We have our main character, Jude, who witnesses the murder of her parents by a fae, who then takes her and her sisters back to the world of fairy where they are raised. They still have a limited access to the mortal world, but we get little glimpses into why Jude is the way she is. She, instead of being scared, has decided to be angry. She's kind of hardened herself into a point, and she is aiming that point at all of these like stunningly beautiful, otherworldly beautiful fae that treat her as other because she is human and so is her sister. She's a twin who has gone a very different route in this, where she seems very timid, trying to sink into the wallpaper, disappear into the background so that none of these fae will point their bullying energy, their anger at her being a human, at her. They will not be able to point any of their malice at her. But Jude has decided that she's tired of trying to get along. At this point, this means war. Let's go for it. Screw you guys. I'm angry. They also have an older sister who is half fae, and that's how they ended up here. The man that murdered their parents is their older sister's father. And so their older sister is much more in love with the human world than even our two human characters are. It's kind of this world that she has much more memories of because she was older when she left it, and it seems like she's much more enticed by the human world. I absolutely hate Carden, who I know is going to end up being our love interest, but he's a jerk. But I'm also aware that he's going to be our love interest, so I am picking up on some moments where I'm like, is Jude reading these things that he's doing one way when they're actually another way? Because I've read enough of these where the enemy turns out to be the lover in the fantasy world that I'm usually trying to pick up on those things as well. Like, are we just seeing this from the wrong lens? This is a really fast read. I think once you get into it, I just need to get into it. But since I've been listening to my audiobook, I haven't really sat down and picked this one up. But that's where we are for right now. I'm going to keep listening to my audiobook probably through the night. Well, not through the night. I'm not going to sleep with my headphones on. Through the evening, I'm going to cook and do some other things around the house. And I could be listening to misery. I could be listening to poor Paul go through horrific things while I make cheeseburgers. All right. I look exhausted. Hi, Weenie. Because I am. I just got off work. I am tired, so I won't have much personality in this clip. I felt like we needed to catch up because there's some things we need to talk about. Number one, I am at the 93% mark. Hi, you have some really hot breath and you are the star. Can you sit? He's going in the kitchen. You better go check what he's up to in the kitchen. You're very sweet. You need a lot of attention, but you're very sweet. All right, I'm at the 93% mark in Misery, and I am really, really enjoying this. But here's what I will say. After my last check-in, we hit the gruesome bits. We hit that scene. If you know, you know. And from there, it is just like one thing after another that I will do a dramatic reenactment for you of me listening to this on audiobook. The emotions that I was going through while walking my dogs. I'm sure the neighbors were like, why is she pulling these faces? Because she's listening to horrible things happen. But yet I don't want to stop reading. It's like every second that I have that I can be listening to this audiobook, I want to be listening to this audiobook. That being said, this is not perfect. There is definitely some things in this that are very dated and that would not be okay. They would not fly in today's world. But for the most part, you're just here with Annie and Paul. Annie is the most terrifying human being on the planet. Also, you're getting little glimpses at the story that Paul is writing, and that's a very different setting with very different characters. It's very dramatic. I'm really enjoying it. I like Stephen King books. There, I said it. I said it out loud. Must be true. That being said, I have only gotten 91 pages into Cruel Prince, and every time I pick this up, I find something else to do. This is not bad. It's not bad, and I should like it. Like, this should be right up my street. We've got fae, there's going to be enemies to lovers, we've got beautiful fae creatures, and somebody that's really had a hard time growing up and dark. I'm sure there's going to be political things happening because it sounds like the throne is going to be up for grabs here soon. I should like this. I literally will find anything to do other than picking this up. And so we are going to soft DNF this for now. For like the 4th time. This is the 4th time I've tried to read this, and I'm not going to force myself to read it. But that being said, the other book that as I was excited to pick up has just arrived. So you're not mad at me. We're still friends, right? I might try it again. Maybe 5th time is the charm. Let me get the book that we're going to open. All right, you ready? Throne of Glass by Sara J. Maas. I have not read the Throne of Glass series. I have attempted to listen to this book on audiobook as well, and it was not happening. I immediately stopped. I don't even think I made it a chapter. I said, no, absolutely not. This narrator is not for me. I found this for dirt cheap on Pango, and I'm going to do it. And this one, I feel like even if I'm not having a good time, I'm still going to have to slog through. I have a feeling that I have heard somewhere that the first book is not the greatest, but you got to like give it some time and the series gets great, and that's not what I want. I want this to rock my socks off, but I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to try my best because I like fantasy books. Why am I not liking fantasy books right now? I'm having a crisis. Well, I've already recorded this entire clip once, and for some reason it was in slow motion, which was very dramatic, but unnecessary. So I don't even know where to restart this. We are sitting outside because it is incredibly loud inside of my house right now, but then I came and sat outside and someone started doing something. It's in that general direction. It sounds like they've turned on the loudest lawnmower in the history of the world. I'm pretty sure that they're adding insulation to a house they've been working on. It's just like loud blowing noise. If you can hear that, I'm sorry. I thought we'd come out here and sit with some birds chirping, but instead we've got that fun noise. Anyways, I'm here because we are going to do some final thoughts on Misery. I actually went and purchased a used copy of this because I wanted to have it on my shelves because I had a really great time with this. I will say with all of the Stephen King books I have read, he is so compulsively readable. I get it. I absolutely get why he is just everybody's favorite author. I've liked every single book that I've picked up from him so far. My final thoughts on this are damn good time. I actually sat down with Winnie and we watched the movie after I finished this because I wanted to. I'd never seen the movie before. I had been picturing Kathy Bates as our Annie Wilkes. So I wanted to push those two things together. The book is actually much more brutal than the movie, but I think that's just a product of when the movie was made. I think Kathy Bates does an amazing job. I'm pretty sure she got an Academy Award for being our villain of the story. I think that if this movie was remade, which I'm surprised it hasn't been, but if this movie was remade today, it would have a much different feel. The movie itself was incredibly bright, and although I feel like they tried to make it feel sinister, it was very much a product of its time. Although that one scene was brutal to watch, it is 10 times more brutal in the book, and there are multiple scenes that aren't shown in the movie that happen in the book, that just the escalation of our villain and her violence. I will also say one of my biggest takeaways to this is I feel like in a lot of modern day, I'm going to use the word content, so books, TV shows, movies, there's a lot of emphasis put on the backstory of the villain, kind of humanizing the villain, why the bad guy is the way they are, whether there's a plane right now. In the last clip, there was a helicopter. So really, it's an improvement. That is like the loudest plane that's ever planed. In this book, Mr. King, Stephen, if you're feeling nasty, does not take the time to humanize our villain. Annie actually starts out, I feel like in the beginning, feeling much more like a person, and as the book goes on, as things escalate, as she becomes a little more unhinged, her mind becomes a little fuzzier, even though we're never in her, well, I would say we're never in her head, we never get her point of view, but we do get a little bit of backstory to her, but it's not the kind of backstory you would expect. It's not that here's the traumatic events that happened in our villains' lives to turn them into the monster you're seeing before you. Instead, it's here are all of the horrible things that our monster has done in the past. She's been a monster from the beginning. You don't need an explanation why. Paul is stuck in this house with this monster. And by the end of the book, she's become this mythical monster to Paul. She's become this horrible entity. It even starts in the beginning how he kind of refers to her. She is the boogeyman. She is a monster, and you don't need to know why she is the way she is. She's unhinged. She's terrifying. And I think that was very interesting because you're kind of waiting, I guess because of a lot of the modern media, you're kind of waiting for that this is why the monster is the way it is, and you don't get it. You don't need it. It makes it scarier because you don't know the reason. There might not be a reason. She just might be banana sandwich, a big murderous banana sandwich. I had a great time with this. I actually do hope, and I usually don't say this, but I actually do hope that they eventually remake this movie. Not that I think anybody would do a better job than Kathy Bates at being Annie Wilkes, but because I feel like they could do such a more current thriller, dark, building the suspense from the beginning, because this book does such a good job of building the suspense from the beginning, and I felt like the movie is very much a product of its time, did not really creep me out, except for the one scene. But like, you're not a human if you don't react to that one scene. So now I have a copy. It's going to sit on my shelf. I enjoyed it. My journey into Stephen King fandom continues. The next update we're going to talk about is Throne of Glass. I also have gotten something on this book. I don't know how, because I'm only 50 pages in, and it has not traveled to various locations with me other than work. Or is that... I don't know. I am having a really hard time getting into this, and I think I'm stopping at around the same spot that I have stopped the audiobook for this one in the past as well. I think this is a me problem. I don't think this is the book's problem. I know that this is going to be a fantasy, obviously. This is the story of Selena Sardothian, I think is her name. Yeah. She is she's an assassin, and she's supposedly like the super best, coolest assassin ever, but she was captured. It sounds like she might have been betrayed and then captured, and she's ended up in a salt mine where the life expectancy of people and prisoners in this mine is a couple of months. She's been there for a year. When she is pulled all dirty, ragged, and skinny from the salt mines and thrown in front of a prince who wants to use her as his champion in this competition that the king is having. And the king wants there to be this competition with all these scary, bad, super killer people where they are competing to become the king's number one assassin, I guess. Or his number one, I'm assuming it's assassin, number one bad guy employed by the king. But the king is the one that put our main character in the mines to begin with. She's not a fan. She doesn't have a choice. What is she going to go? Back down into the mines and slowly die down there? So she is going to go with this prince somewhere to enter a competition full of super killers, it sounds like. I know that this book was written when Sarah J. Maas was quite young. From everything I've heard from everyone, the series as it goes on gets better and better because she gets into her stride as a writer. I don't think that I'm having a problem with this because of the writing. I don't have a problem with Sarah J. Maas's writing. I think I am just not currently in the mood for YA fantasy, which I've tried 2 in a row, and I'm trying to force it, and it's not working. And I really want to like this one. I wanted to like Cruel Prince too, but for some reason, I just can't get into that book. And I think it's me. I 110% think it's me. I am gonna try and keep picking this up. I've been picking up a lot of horror books instead, which is very interesting. I think I'm in the mood for scary after Misery. I'm gonna keep trying though. I want to like this. I just need to get through it. It's not going to take me long if I just sit down and do it. I just need to sit down and do it. But I've got an appointment this afternoon, and then I'm going to have nothing but time on my hands. I might do a little reading, you know? It's a beautiful day. Why not? Me and the dogs might hang out outside and do some reading. If Cheese can stop digging holes and eating dirt. I don't know what that's about. You would think I don't feed her. Can we not eat whatever it is you're eating? I'll check back in with you soon. Okay, wait. I have a question. Sorry if I'm making you dizzy, but what if, what if, instead of reading this, would you be mad Be real honest. You can be honest with me. Would you get mad if I read this instead? I know this is a very different vibe, but I think I'm having a horror moment. Not a horror moment, but like a horror moment. And I really want to read this. And it's still kind of in line with, I probably should have already read this by now. So like, it's on theme-ish. I want to like Throne of Glass. I want to like Throne of Glass, but I think if I force myself to read it when I'm not in the mood for it, I'm not going to like it. It took me like trying to read Discovery of Witches like 500 times before I actually read it and enjoyed it and like binged the entire series. So I feel my hair is insane. I feel like I should read The Exorcist. I think I'm gonna read The Exorcist. Guess what? We're here to talk about a book. I know, surprise, surprise. I've got my Winnie, in case anybody was wondering. I have goldfish because I'm an adult, and I recently realized if I want to eat goldfish, I can just buy goldfish and eat them whenever I want. You don't have to be a toddler to enjoy little tiny crackers shaped like goldfish. I know you just want my goldfish. Also, the AC is blasting because it is flipping hot outside. So enjoy that as our background noise. We are here to talk about this. I started off this vlog with very different intentions. I wanted to read fantasy because I thought I liked fantasy, but apparently right now I can't force it. Instead, we're on a horror kick. I finished this so stinking fast. This, again, was something that as soon as I picked it up, I didn't want to put it down. If you do not know about The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty, welcome. Welcome to the world. We're glad to have you. This is the story of a young girl named Regan who is exhibiting very strange behaviors. Her mother is a famous actress they are living in Georgetown. And when some horrible things start happening to Regan, they eventually seek help from the church. This is interesting because I enjoyed this a lot. Like, I read it so fast, but I don't know if I would have enjoyed it as much if I hadn't already consumed the movie, which is a very incredibly close adaptation because the author of this book was also the screenwriter and was heavily involved in making the movie. And then he later went on to direct the third Exorcist movie, which I believe is based on the book Legion, also by this author. I'm pretty sure I've seen the third Exorcist movie, but I know that it's got a lot of really like quippy, fast dialogue. This is going to sound so strange, but I was thinking like if Gilmore Girls, stay with me. It is not Gilmore Girls. This is not like Gilmore Girls at all, but that really like fast, quippy, slightly sarcastic speech, that is similar to this, whereas like this is a lot of dialogue. This is a lot of really fast moving, quick dialogue. A lot of this book is just conversations happening between people, but it's incredibly well written and can be both like ominous and sad and also sarcastic and slightly funny at times. It's people going through this horrible, horrible situation. And we have an interesting dynamic because our mother character is an atheist. She does not go to church. She has not taught her daughter about religion. And yet she is the one that is convinced that her child is being possessed by some sort of demonic force, whereas our father Karras, who is our priest character, which is our other kind of main character in this story, he's a trained psychologist, I believe. He's gone to Harvard. He is the one that is leaning more towards this being a psychological issue that this child is having and not a supernatural issue that this child is having, which you would feel like in most cases it would be the opposite, that the person that has a strong faith and religious background would be the one that would be more apt to believe that something like this was happening. I feel like they do a good job in the movie of kind of showing you that they've exhausted all medical avenues, and they do. They try and take her to the doctor. They think it's epilepsy. They think she has ADHD, and Regan is gradually becoming worse and worse and worse to the point where you're getting there. You're like, okay, like we can't deny that something is happening to this person, but it's all grounded in reality. And even until the very end, is this something that she's faking? This can't be something that she's faking. Right? But the priest keeps seeing things like, well, this could be explained away this way. This could be explained away that way. Even when he's trying to petition the church to get an exorcism, he has to keep going back to that can be explained away this way. That could just be her having read a book or her, I don't know, having some sort of mental disorder or psychological break. He is constantly trying to look for rational explanations for what is happening to our 11-year-old character, who we never actually get her point of view. We are getting the adults surrounding the situation. The titular exorcist does not show up until the very kind of ending of the book, even though he is present in the prologue. So it's very, very well done. It's extremely disturbing and very brutal what Regan goes through. And all of these adults around her are just like beside themselves trying to figure out a way. Because not only is it our priest character, our mother character, there's the mother's assistant, there's the housekeepers, there's all of these adults around this child that are watching her disintegrate, just absolutely fall apart in front of them. And they're trying everything to figure out what's going on. How can we help her? It has a hopeful ending, is how I'll put it. This is definitely one of those things that I won't say it scared me. It definitely disturbed me. And there's parts of this that are very hard to read. But I think similar to the movie, when this book first came out, this was probably incredibly scary. But now with all of the horror media that you can consume, and also because I'd seen the movie, I knew where this was going. I think that what scares people, how much you need to do to scare people has changed over time. This probably would wreck your sleep for weeks when it first came out. I really enjoyed this. I think that the way that William Peter Blatty writes dialogue is amazing. That's how I'll put it. It was dialogue heavy, but done really well. I enjoyed the dialogue. It moves very, very quickly. I flew through this tiny little book. So that, kids, is where we're going to end this vlog. Because no matter what I have tried to do, I've only been successful at reading 2 of the books that I set out. I've read many other books, but they just weren't the books that I was thinking I was going to read. So once again, the moody mood reader strikes again. But if you had fun hanging out with me and the dogs, please subscribe. I hope you're reading good books out there, wherever you are, and I'll see you next time.